From being the highlight of filming Picard to the reason why that scene tugs on every Trekkie's emotions. Here's how Sir Patrick Stewart broke down the craziest twist in Picard's third season. Starting with the scene that shocked everyone. The season started off strong with its premiere episode. It felt as though the showrunners understood that they needed to go back to Star Trek's roots. The story is streamlined and easier to grasp, and it feels like we've known the characters forever. But within the final moments of the second episode, titled Disengage, a bombshell was dropped onto the audience. Jean-Luc Picard has a son. It blew everyone's minds, but it's not like we hadn't suspected it.
Why are you doing this?
Because he's my son.
Even his number one guy, Riker, had a suspicion that the handsome young man in their midst was related to Picard. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The real kicker was when he realized that his son, Jack, was the product of a one-night stand between him and Beverly Crusher. Mind blown. It's an iconic scene that'll be embedded in every Trekkie's mind for years to come. The way Picard and Beverly's eyes locked on the bridge, and then the sudden realization that he'd missed the opportunity to raise a child, was beautifully written. But it's Sir Patrick Stewart's reaction to the moment that elevates it to new heights. In an interview with USA Today, he revealed that it was one of the most powerful scenes he's filmed in his entire career. It was certainly the highlight of shooting 3 seasons of Picard. Fans will include it among their top 10 greatest Star Trek moments. When describing the scene and what his character was going through, Patrick explained that Picard was furious with Beverly. They lost touch when she ended their brief romantic relationship, but now she's back. All of a sudden, Picard has to grapple with the fact that she not only had their son, but also raised him in secret, away from the Enterprise and, of course, away from him. According to Patrick, Picard is enraged. We can't blame him though. Anyone would be furious to learn they had a child after years of no contact. That's one hell of a bitter pill to swallow. But this is where we got to see more of the old Jean-Luc, the one we all fell in love with in The Next Generation. The showrunners changed his personality for Picard, but Season 3 brings him back to his roots and keeps him there. Interestingly, the show mirrors some elements of Patrick Stewart's life. For example, his father, who was a celebrated World War II veteran, was absent for most of his adolescence. For the first 15 years or so, his father slipped in and out of their home and spent most of his time in the army. And when he returned, he wasn't the father that Patrick knew as a child. So you can see how that parallels the relationship between Jean-Luc and Jack. In fact, Jack visits Picard in 2396 on 10 Forward Avenue, where he is having lunch. Jack asks him if he ever regretted not having a family and settling down. Picard proudly says that Starfleet was the only family he needed. Ouch! That's why Jack never tried to develop a relationship with him. Ed Speleers, who plays Jack, also had plenty to say about his character's disappointment in his father. He explained that for Jack, it was like having a world-famous celebrity as your dad and knowing that they chose not to be in your life. That would traumatize anyone. So Jack decided to make his own path and try to find his purpose in life. But the blame doesn't fall entirely on Picard. After all, he's one of the most influential people in the Federation. He wasn't even aware he had a son. As far as he knew, he had a one-night stand with Beverly, and they went their separate ways. In the very next episode, he and Beverly try to talk things out, but it's obvious that he isn't ready to acknowledge her side of the story. He feels that she took away his right to choose to be a father when she left the Enterprise. And a lot of fans agree with this. The fact of the matter is that Beverly got pregnant right after she and Picard had and decided to have Jack without involving his father. As a result, Jack grew up resenting Picard. Imagine that same kid walking up to Picard while he's having lunch and finding out that the Federation is all he needs. Yeah, stings, doesn't it? This just goes to show how well made Season 3 is. The fact we're debating the nuances and moral ambiguities of the characters' decisions is why Star Trek is what it is. The humanness of the character and the insane gray areas are why fans keep coming back to the franchise over and over again. That feeling is what showrunner Terry Matalas wants to recreate once again. In an interview with Collider, Matalas explained that bringing Jack Crusher to life stems from Jean-Luc's father-daughter relationship with Soji in Season 1. Once they'd established that he wasn't above having a paternal relationship with someone, it was time to push the narrative forward. The next logical step from the father-daughter trope was the father-son trope. But what was the best way to make it happen? Well, in one version, Matalas wanted to have a mirror dimension storyline in Season 3. But that wouldn't have worked, and fans would probably hate that Jean-Luc was stuck in a mirror world where he had a son. It didn't make sense. So Matalas had another idea. Why not bring back one of Jean-Luc's most complex relationships and use that to build a narrative around Season 3? He talked about Patrick bringing Beverly Crusher back for Season 3, and they both loved it. They wouldn't have had it any other way. Once they agreed on the idea, they brought in actress Gates McFadden. The trio did a deep dive into Beverly's character and crafted a storyline where it made sense why she did what she did. They didn't want her to turn into an unlikable character who ruined Jean-Luc's life. You see, the fun of Star Trek is in the humanness of the characters. Both Picard and Beverly had legitimate reasons for being angry with each other, and both characters had solid reasons for why they chose the lives they did. Like I said, it was a beautifully written episode, and the reason why it worked is because of the way they filmed it. There's no dialogue. When Riker wakes Beverly up and brings her to the bridge, the audience held their breath. Jean-Luc had to make a decision on whether to send young Jack to his death, and by that point, literally everyone knew that Jack had to be Jean-Luc's son. So, being a good friend, Riker brought Beverly onto the bridge. He had to do anything he could to convince Jean-Luc that what he was doing was a mistake. When he and Beverly looked at each other, without saying a word, he realized the truth. The 20 years of history between them distilled into one beautiful sequence. Patrick and McFadden's performances were superb. Matalas, on the other hand, was told by network executives that the moment wouldn't work. They said that an entire conversation couldn't be conveyed in a series of long, pensive looks. But Matalas had the right instincts and knew that fans would appreciate a show, don't tell sequence.
I couldn't believe I got away with what I got away with. Especially when you see the last four, there's more to come.
All the cues were laid out, and yet Jean-Luc refused to accept reality. So Matalas knew that the only way he'd accept it would be to look into Beverly's eyes. Wasn't it perfect? What do you think? That's all I have today on Picard Season 3's craziest twist.